Is it possible that in just 24 hours, a single message could fracture a dynamic that once seemed unshakable and change the way Taehyung looks at Jungkook forever? Without anyone truly realizing what was happening, there were no sirens, no official announcements, no emergency statements shaking the entertainment world. And yet, that was precisely what made it unsettling. Within such a short span of time, something shifted. Not only sensed by fans accustomed to catching microscopic details, but felt in the atmosphere itself, which suddenly seemed unfamiliar. As if an invisible pause had formed between two figures long known for warmth, closeness, and spontaneity. In 24 hours, everything changed, and that change began with a message from Jungkook, followed by V's reaction, never fully explained yet powerfully felt. The day began like any other. Schedules ran as usual, activities appeared normal, cameras captured moments that at first glance seemed ordinary. But beneath the routine, something was out of sync. Greetings that once came without thought now felt restrained. Gazes that used to seek each other now quietly veered away. Many watched without noticing anything amiss, but for those fluent in reading body language, something was no longer the same. Was this merely coincidence, or the earliest hint of something far deeper? Questions began to surface as small fragments were placed side by side. Jungkook, known for being straightforward yet deeply emotional, sent a message. No one knows exactly what it said, but the timing became critical. The message arrived at an unusual moment, during a pause that should have been calm. From that point on, Taehyung's response no longer followed the familiar pattern. He did not explode, did not react sharply, did not display anger easily caught on camera. Instead, he grew quieter, more measured, more distant, as if recalibrating a distance that had never needed adjustment before. Could a single message trigger such deep reflection? In a fast-moving world, words are often underestimated. Yet for those living under constant scrutiny, one sentence can mean everything. It can be a reminder, a confession, or a mirror reflecting something long avoided. Jungkook wrote, Taehyung read, and from that moment, the rhythm changed. The spontaneous greetings that once marked their encounters were gone. The small, effortless smiles appeared less often. In their place lingered brief silences, repeating themselves again and again. Some fans tried to brush it off. They said it was just fatigue, just a packed schedule, just coincidence, an incomplete moment caught on camera. But why did the change persist? Why did that distance feel real across different occasions, not just a single clipped scene? When Jungkook seemed about to greet him, Taehyung chose to look elsewhere. When laughter erupted around them, Taehyung's response felt restrained, as if his thoughts were elsewhere, unfinished. This was where speculation began to grow, not as empty gossip, but as an attempt to understand human dynamics. Relationships built over time do not always fracture because of major conflicts. Sometimes they shift because of a small realization. Could Jungkook's message have touched on something sensitive? Could he have said something honest, too honest, forcing Taehyung to take time to process it? Or did the message reopen an old wound, carefully hidden until now? Within the first 24 hours after the message was sent, a chronology of change became visible. Taehyung did not openly avoid Jungkook, yet his body language spoke volumes. His shoulders seemed slightly more rigid when standing nearby. The physical distance that once felt non-existent now left a pocket of quiet space. Even the way they greeted each other, once so familiar, now felt formal, like two people carefully weighing their words. What made the situation even more compelling was the absence of clarification. There was no denial, no justification. Silence became the canvas for interpretation. In the entertainment world, silence often speaks louder than statements. Every moment without explanation added another layer of mystery. Every brief clip became material for analysis. Was this a strategy to protect privacy, or was there truly something not yet ready to be revealed? Fans' emotions split in every direction. Some felt anxious, others angry, while many chose to wait with hope. They revisited earlier moments, searching for clues that might have been overlooked. Was this change truly sudden, or had it been developing quietly, only now becoming visible? Jungkook's message may have been merely the final trigger, not the beginning of it all. Interestingly, Jungkook himself appeared different afterward. Not colder, but more cautious. His smile remained, yet his eyes held something else. As if he understood that the words he sent carried consequences. Did he regret it? Or did he believe the truth needed to be spoken, regardless of the cost? In brief interactions, Jungkook seemed to make an effort to maintain emotional distance, as though giving Taeyong the space he never explicitly asked for. This is where the rarely discussed drama of humanity lies. Not in open conflict, but in distances that quietly grow. In two people sharing the same space, yet no longer the same frequency. In 24 hours, everything changed, not because of an argument, but because of awareness. Will this distance remain? Or is it merely a temporary phase before a new understanding forms? Many believe strong relationships are tested not in moments of happiness, but when communication shifts. Jungkook's message may have been that test. Taeyong's reaction may be the process. And the public, without realizing it, became silent witnesses. As time passed, more subtle details emerged. The way Taeyong chose his words in public. The topics he seemed to avoid. The way Jungkook held himself back from getting too close. Together, these formed a narrative never officially written, yet undeniably felt. Is this the end of an old dynamic, or the beginning of something more mature? What is certain is that within those 24 hours, something shifted. No one noticed it in the first second, but its impact continues to resonate. Jungkook's message and V's reaction became a turning point, reminding us that behind the spotlight, they are still human, carrying feelings, boundaries, and the need to understand themselves. And perhaps the biggest question is not what the message contained, but why it mattered so much. Why Taeyong chose distance as his response. Why Jungkook chose silence afterward. Is truth always meant to bring peace, or does it sometimes demand an emotional sacrifice? This story is not over. Every subsequent meeting, every brief interaction will continue to be read and interpreted. In a world hungry for instant answers, this story moves slowly, filled with pauses and unanswered questions. And it is precisely there that its power lies. Because sometimes, the greatest changes happen without sound, through a single message, a single reaction, and 24 hours that changed everything. The silence that followed did not fade with time. Instead, it settled in, becoming a quiet presence that shaped every subsequent interaction. What once felt natural now seemed deliberate, as though every movement required calculation. Observers began to notice that Taeyong no longer mirrored Jungkook's energy the way he once did. Where there had been instinctive synchronization, there was now restraint. Where laughter once flowed freely, there was a pause, almost imperceptible yet impossible to ignore once seen. What made this shift so unsettling was its subtlety. There was no dramatic fallout, no visible confrontation to point to and say, "This is where it broke." Instead, it unfolded like a slow realization, the kind that dawns only after the fact. People began asking themselves when they had last seen the two of them greet each other the same way. When was the last time their eyes met without hesitation? These questions lingered, unanswered, growing heavier with every appearance. Taeyong's demeanor, in particular, became the center of attention. He was still present, still professional, still composed, but there was an unmistakable layer of distance. His expressions seemed more guarded, his reactions less spontaneous. It was as if he was protecting something internal, something newly fragile. Was it disappointment? Confusion? Or simply the weight of understanding something that could no longer be unseen? Jungkook, on the other hand, appeared caught between resolve and uncertainty. There were moments when he seemed ready to bridge the gap, only to pull back at the last second. His body language suggested hesitation, as though he was respecting an unspoken boundary. The message he sent had already crossed one threshold. Perhaps he feared crossing another. This mutual restraint created a space filled not with hostility, but with unresolved emotion. Speculation intensified not because of what was said, but because of what was not. Silence invites interpretation, and every quiet moment became fertile ground for theories. Some believed the message contained a confession, others suspected it was a confrontation, and some wondered if it was neither, but something far more complicated, a truth spoken at the wrong time. Without confirmation, every possibility felt both plausible and incomplete. As days passed, the initial shock gave way to a deeper sense of melancholy. Fans who once celebrated the ease between them now found themselves mourning something they could not fully define. It was not a breakup, not a feud, but a transformation. And transformations, especially quiet ones, often feel like loss before they feel like growth. There were moments that almost seemed to contradict the narrative. A shared glance that lingered a fraction longer than expected. A smile that appeared when the other wasn't looking. These fleeting instances reignited hope, only to dissolve just as quickly. They raised the question of whether the distance was truly emotional or merely a pause, a necessary silence before something new could take shape. Yet even these moments carried weight. They suggested that whatever had changed was not simple, that beneath the restraint, there was still familiarity, still care, still history. The message Jungkook sent had not erased the past, but it had altered how that past was carried into the present. Taehyung's reaction was not rejection in the traditional sense. It felt more like reevaluation. The idea that one honest exchange could force such reevaluation struck a chord with many. It reflected a universal truth rarely acknowledged, that honesty, while often praised, can be destabilizing. When words expose what has been carefully balanced, they demand a response. Not always immediate, not always verbal, but always consequential. Taehyung's distance may have been that response, a way to regain equilibrium in the face of emotional disruption. As weeks unfolded, the narrative continued to evolve without resolution. The absence of closure became its own storyline. Every appearance was scrutinized, every interaction slowed down and replayed in search of meaning. Yet the more people searched, the clearer it became that this was not a story meant to be solved quickly. It was unfolding in real time, shaped by emotions that could not be rushed. In the end, the most striking aspect of this entire episode was its humanity. Beneath the fame, the expectations, and the relentless observation, two individuals were navigating something deeply personal. The world saw fragments, but the truth lived in the spaces between them, in the pauses, the glances, the restraint. And perhaps that is why this story resonates so strongly. Because it reminds us that not all turning points are loud, and not all changes announce themselves. Sometimes, everything changes in 24 hours, not because something ends, but because something is finally acknowledged. And once acknowledged, it cannot simply be set aside. It must be felt, processed, and eventually understood. Whether this moment marks a temporary distance or the foundation of a new dynamic remains unknown. But one thing is certain. After that message, after that reaction, nothing returned to exactly the way it was before. And as time continued to move forward, the weight of that realization only grew heavier. What initially felt like a fleeting shift began to settle into a new normal, one that neither of them openly acknowledged, yet both seemed to navigate with care. The absence of explanation did not dull the impact. Instead, it sharpened awareness. Every small gesture carried meaning now. Every silence felt intentional. Every moment of distance echoed louder than words ever could. There was a sense that Taehyung was no longer reacting, but choosing. Choosing when to engage, when to pull back, when to remain neutral. This choice did not appear driven by anger, but by contemplation. He seemed to be looking inward, reassessing not only the message itself, but what it represented. Messages, after all, are rarely just text. They carry timing, intention, and emotional context. Whatever Jungkook had written did not simply land. It lingered. Jungkook, meanwhile, appeared to carry a quiet tension of his own. He did not attempt to explain himself publicly. nor did he try to force familiarity back into place. Instead, there was restraint, a noticeable effort to respect boundaries that had never been spoken aloud. This restraint spoke volumes. It suggested awareness, perhaps even acceptance, that some truths, once shared, require space to breathe. What made the situation even more complex was the shared history between them. Years of trust, shared experiences, and emotional shorthand do not disappear overnight. They remain, embedded in memory, influencing every interaction that follows. This history made the distance feel heavier, not lighter. It wasn't the absence of connection that hurt, but the presence of something unresolved standing between them. Observers began to sense that this was not a story of conflict, but of transition. Transitions are rarely clean. They are messy, uncomfortable, and often misunderstood from the outside. The desire to label what was happening clashed with the reality that some moments resist definition. Was this growth? Was it protection? Was it the natural consequence of honesty meeting vulnerability? As speculation reached its peak, another realization quietly emerged. Perhaps the most important part of this story was not the message itself, but the courage it took to send it. And equally, the courage it took to sit with its impact without immediate resolution. In a world that demands instant reactions, choosing reflection is an act of quiet strength. There were no villains here, no clear lines of right or wrong. Just two people responding differently to the same emotional moment. One chose to speak. The other chose to step back. Both choices carried weight. Both choices reshaped the dynamic they shared. And so the story continues, not with dramatic declarations, but with patience. With moments that feel unfinished. With an understanding that some changes are not meant to be explained in real time. They are meant to be lived through. Whether this distance eventually closes or transforms into something entirely new remains to be seen. But what cannot be undone is the shift itself. The awareness has settled in. The old rhythm has been interrupted. And from that interruption, something new is inevitably forming. Because sometimes, the most profound changes do not announce themselves with noise or conflict. They arrive quietly, through a message sent, a reaction chosen, and a shared understanding that once something is said, it changes how everything else is felt.